Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of Jerry's Take on China, and today we have some scandal for you. There is a small local level scandal going on in Australia and it's making national news, but not for the reason we might expect. It's hitting the news because of China. New South Wales, a state of Australia, has an independent commission against corruption, ICAC. It's been very busy recently because there seems to have been a lot of corruption in New South Wales. Just a few months ago, the former Premier Gladys Berejiklian became a victim, in her words, of it and stood aside after it was declared that she and her lover, also a Member of Parliament, were guilty of corruption, but they don't or haven't faced charges. Now, a former mayor who no one has ever heard of, Philip Sansom, from a suburb that few people outside of the city of Sydney have ever heard of, Hurstville, is in the national newspapers and TV because he took a trip to China. Not just him, but two other councillors. Strangely though, they didn't know that accepting a flight paid for by a businessman who had lodged planning application for a large centre in their area was the wrong thing to do. Former Mayor Sansom even took his wife along for a trip, but was still caught on camera by his host being entertained by someone who looks decidedly unlike his wife. She seems a lot prettier, a lot younger, much more Asian than Mrs. Sansom. It appears, at least in Hurstville, that getting flights, accommodation, meal, having a Rolls-Royce car to ferry them around, and receiving approximately $170,000 in cash each was normal behaviour because Sansom has expressed surprise that his action is considered corrupt. It gets much more exciting and James Bond-esque when we learn that the mayor and one of the councillors were recorded on video and in photos holding hands, sharing single seats, and generally having fun with some nice Chinese girls who were only there to keep them company. Still, the former mayor is quoted in media as saying he had no idea this was considered corrupt. He thought it was part of doing business in China. Except they weren't doing business in China. They were, by their own admission, on a boys' weekend in China, but the business was all in Hurstville. What's really got Australia's mainstream media in such a frenzy is not that these elderly, greedy, elected representatives of their local community were foolish enough to believe this kind of behaviour is acceptable and normal. Perhaps it is in Hurstville. I don't know. Scott Morrison, Australia's former PM, is from the same area, and look at him. That's not the frenzy material. It's that it happened in China, and apparently the man making some of the payments is Chinese. Except he's not. According to the transcripts of the ICAC hearing, which I have read, Ching Hua Philip Yu, or Oi, which every Chinese watcher will know from its spelling is not a Mandarin name, is a 40-year resident of Australia who hails from the colony of Hong Kong. Also, a Twitter post recently from a certain anti-China Swede stated, "This happens all the time with Chinese officials, except here's the truth. The property developers may very well be Chinese ethnicity, but they're long-term residents running Australian businesses, Australian community, in the Australian community, and entertaining Australian community leaders. But they happen to commit all these alleged offences while on a boys' weekend to the wrong country." Hurstville has a local newspaper. It's called the St George and Sutherland Shire Leader and is one of the few independent media outlets left in Australia. So, unsurprisingly, their headline states, "Watchdog finds 3 former state councillors corrupt." And you actually have to read the article to learn that there's any Chinese connection at all. Had these 3 councillors been taken to any place in Australia or the world other than China, the St George and Sutherland Shire Leader may very well have been the only newspaper to have carried this report. Unfortunately for them, they decided to be sleazy sexpats in China, and because China is bad, they've found their faces on the front pages of all of Australia's mainstream media and even beamed out of the TV during the evening news. As a side note to the entire debacle, one thing missed in the whole media frenzy is that the company funding all the trips and developing the real estate in Hurstville, GR Capital Group, entered liquidation in 2018, so they're probably not going to face corruption charges. So there's nothing really interesting about this story except that a few corrupt Australians now face some time behind bars. Although these 3 councillors got to spend a weekend in Tangshan in Hebei, not that far from Beijing, that's the only bit of spice in the story. I really hope for them it was all worth it. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my videos. The following on my channel is getting bigger, but I'm still a very long way off from catching up with some of those China haters. Thanks once again for watching and see you next time. Bye for now.